Sometimes you just find yourself in the midst of situations and circumstances that are beyond your control and you feel overwhelmed. Well, it happens to all of us. And if you find yourself in the midst of emotionally overwhelming circumstances now, then I think you're going to find that the exercise I teach you in this video is of tremendous value. I've used it myself repeatedly. It's something that I teach clients as well. So I'll put it in perspective with a story. I was working with a client recently whose fiance's mother had recently died very quickly, surprisingly, due to terminal brain cancer. And in the aftermath of that death, the family was just ripped apart. People weren't speaking to each other. They're digging their heels in, they're grieving very painfully. And my client is watching this happen to the family of the woman that he's chosen to marry. And he's heartbroken by it. He wants more than anything to help the family reconcile and come back together. And he's actually the only one talking to all of the members of the family. While they aren't talking to each other, he is talking to each of them. So he has taken this incredible responsibility on his shoulders. It's very admirable and understandably, and it's very exhausting for him too. So he's discussing this with me recently. And I said to him, look, T, let's imagine that you're having a bad dream. You have woken up from this terrible dream in which your fiance's family is rattling apart in the aftermath of your fiance's mother's death. They're angry with each other, they're not speaking to each other, and you have just awoken from this dream. Does that change anything? And as soon as I asked that, the moment afterwards, he said, well, yeah, I get a sense of like the archetypal roles these people are playing. Like I get a sense of what they represent in the dream, all of a sudden it's like a story unfolding and it's not so, I don't know, it's not so heavy in some way. So what I'll suggest to you, not to diminish the difficulty of the situation that you're in, but when we work psychologically, we recognize that anything can be taken as a dream. And in doing so, there are two key things that come into play. One is that we take the circumstances less literally. We start to look through the surface appearances of things to deeper psychological meanings. The other is that we take things less personally. You've had the experience of this. You've had dreams before where even if you're the main character in the dream, it's you, but not quite you. So we can deliteralize and depersonalize situations and start to get a deeper and a richer understanding of the psychological experience unfolding. Now, the thing with dreams, when we work with them in at least the way that I work with them in the tradition of archetypal psychology, we consider that everything there is necessary, which is to say, every detail there is necessary, and everything necessary is there. So we want to stick to the image itself. We want to stick to the dream. And we want to do so in a way that holds in mind, again, everything there is necessary. There's nothing accidental in a dream. And everything necessary, everything needed is there. Even if we may think that something's missing. Mm-mm. As far as a dream is concerned, everything necessary is there. So, if you consider some set of circumstances, either present day or some past experience that has been overwhelming and has left a kind of residue on you, you might see what changes if you consider this to be a dream. So, this doesn't solve all problems, but you can see perhaps that it gives you a bit of psychic distance from the immediacy of the situation, and it may help you actually see some of the as in the case with my client, some of the deeper archetypal themes here. So, as my client described, when he started considering this immediate set of circumstances as a dream, he became aware of the archetypal roles that were being played by these people. And here's some of the value of doing this. And when we see that we are caught up in archetypal roles, we start to recognize that this isn't just some problem involving our person. This may actually touch on deep psychic themes for humans in general. I see over and over again that clients are often unconsciously enacting roles that are very similar to old myths, old fables, and in a way, this can be some comfort when we recognize that we're not alone in this sort of situation. It also gives us the opportunity to look to those particular stories that have some mythic likeness to the situation for a clue as to how the problem may be resolved. The challenge that we often encounter when we take things literally and we take things personally is that we ramp up the ego's sense of self-importance. There's nothing more the ego likes than a problem to be solved. But rather than going and solving the problem from our habitual ego perspective, if we look to what this situation is like, or maybe another way to think of it is who we are like when we find ourselves in these situations. This can, this can, it's very strange to say, it sort of loosens our psychological filter through which we've been examining the situation. And it gives us a very different way to relate to these circumstances in which we find ourselves. So, again, the move is quite simple. What if, rather than considering this, rather than imagining this as a literal situation involving literal people that you know, what changes when you imagine this to be something like a dream? If this isn't a memory, but this is a dream that you had, if this isn't some immediate sensory perception you're having, but this is a dream in which you find yourself, what, if anything, changes? Now, I find that there is some continued value in taking things up as dreams. Reason being, the archetypal psychologist James Hillman suggests in a book called The Dream in the Underworld that dreams are already working to forget the patient's remembered past. And he's suggesting that rather than psychotherapy continually turning us toward the past, digging up memories, all of this, we ought to focus on the dream that's engaged in a kind of alchemical cooking process, dissolving the person's habitual sense of self and allowing them to congeal in new forms. Again, quite often we become fixated on the literal view of the events of our lives. But if we can take those events psychologically, if we can imagine them as a dream, which is not to deny the significance of the events, it's not to deny the importance. If anything, this gives them a deeper significance, a more perduring sense of importance when we recognize there is something archetypal being enacted in this dream. So, again, you, in these circumstances that may be quite overwhelming, you may find this to be of great value in taking up these circumstances as a dream and simply exploring with some sense of curiosity what, if anything, changes in doing so. You may find that this loosens some of the fixations with which you've been trying to solve the problem, and when those fixations are loosened, that, paradoxically enough, is when creative breakthroughs most often occur. So, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Weird, I know, and yet you may find it quite fruitful as you navigate these difficult circumstances. So, I hope this is a blessing. If you are inclined to look for further support, you can check out whatever offerings I have available on my website at this point. Either way, I do hope this is of some value to you. And if this brings up questions, curiosities, reflections, do feel free to drop those in the comments down below.